Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over a Brew, let me tell you about my friends at Roberts Motors. You know, one of our favorite episodes here on the show was when we had a chance to sit down with Sam and John Roberts. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, go back and take a look at it. It's great to see the interaction between not only two business partners, but of course father and son as well. They really epitomize what a local business is all about. Number one, doing business the right way, giving back to the community. If you have a chance, you may not buy a car from there, but at least give them the opportunity. Shop robertsmotors.com. You get more at Roberts Motors Ford. More selection, more value. Each vehicle they sell comes with the Roberts Rewards Value Package, which includes oil changes for 2 years, loaner cars, car washes, and much more. Get more at Roberts Motors Ford. Check them out at robertsmotors.com. Now enjoy this week's episode of Business Over a Brew. Welcome to Business Over a Brew. Pleased to be joined in this episode by a longtime friend of mine, Kelly Flaherty with Thompson, Flaherty, CPAs and tax consultants. Kelly, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for asking me.
I can't believe you accepted it. So we usually start with just tell us a little bit about your background. And okay. I know most of our guests probably grew up here in the Riverman area, but a little different story for you.
Yes, sir. I grew up in South Dakota on a farm. I think it's the best. I had the best childhood a kid could want. You know, wide open spaces. Our family owned 700 acres. So
wow.
I was able to. And if you know anything about South Dakota, you know it's a big hunting state. So I was able to hunt pheasant, deer, quail, grouse, turkey. It was just a great place to grow up.
Big family, a lot of siblings, or
no, just two. A brother and a sister, both younger.
Okay. I was just curious because I know we've had a couple people on the show that are a member of what I call an exclusive club. That's the 4-Kid Club. If you have four, which I'm a member of, and you are too. So
yeah.
So I was just curious if you grew up that way or
nope,
but that's still pretty big.
Just the three of us, yeah. Now I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Right.
It's great. I always thought growing up, you know, coming from a family of three kids, there's always 2 against 1. I said, when I grow up, we're going to have 4 kids or 2 kids. And we're going to have it so that you always have a
team
partner,
up.
And that way you go to the amusement park and you got somebody to ride with.
You saw me in the grocery store one time, a long time ago. I don't know if you remember this story, but I mean, I'm basically have 2 carts with me full of food. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, well, four mouths to feed at home now, Kelly. Yep. So it's the grocery bill got a little higher when you went when we went from 2 to 4 anyway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit then. Grew up in South Dakota. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Evangel University. Started there, and then I ended up getting my CPA, or college accounting degree from SIUE in Edwardsville.
Okay, so you had some roots here.
Yes.
But then out of college, I know, didn't go right into the accounting field.
No.
Tell us about your career choice after you graduated.
Okay, yeah, I graduated or left Evangel with a management degree, and then I went right into 24-hour Nautilus at that time. I did some training in Springfield, Missouri. And that's where they had a location there. I did training as assistant manager, and then they moved me to Omaha, Nebraska, and I worked up there, opened a new office up there for them.
Had fitness always been something that was an interest of you growing up? Or?
Oh, yeah. I've always tried to work out and exercise, except during tax season. Don't really have much time to do it then, but no, I've always tried to keep in good shape. I loved athletics, and when I was in school, played football, basketball, did some track.
Okay.
Yeah.
What positions did you play in football?
I played strong safety and I-back.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. They called it monster back then, but it's strong safety.
You look like a monster.
Yeah, that's right. Made you feel good.
Right, yeah. So tell us about that experience of, I know it was, you talked about before we came on, just long hours and really kind of an intense role in the fitness area.
Yep. Yeah. When I was working at 24-hour Nautilus, we were working 12-hour days, and that was Monday through Saturday. And sometimes they'd even call you on Sunday for a business meeting, and it burnt me out after so long. I was making great money, and we were doing really well, but it wasn't worth it.
But you had definitely moved up the ladder, had been successful there. What led you to the decision to not only change jobs, but totally change career fields?
Yeah. Well, after that, I left and came down to this area because I was dating my now wife at the time. And then at that time, I met some people that they had a son that owned it was called Flying Tigers. Mm-hmm. It was like a UPS, kind of like a moving company. And he had a location in Houston, and he's going to open one up in Dallas. So I was going to go down there and manage that one for him. So I went down there a couple months, it never panned out. It just seemed like it never worked out. So after that, I left there, kind of discouraged and basically out of money. And so, so I went. Talked to my folks, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come home? Just clear your mind and see where you go from there." So I went home. It was in the fall time. It was in harvest time. And if you know anything about farming and harvest, you probably see these tractors and combines going late at night.
Right.
And you do that because it's too wet during the morning, so you have to go into the evening when the crop's dry so you can harvest it. So anyway, I was working like from noon to 10 o'clock at night every day. And so anyway, I'd have my devotions in the morning, read the Bible, pray. And I was really, just searching, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to stay on the farm, or what am I going to do? So anyway, one morning I was reading the Bible, and I got a real peace. Just said, "Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good." And that very evening, I got a call from a CPA that I had long, just really, had a very good admiration for. He was down in North Platte, Nebraska. He called me. He said, "Hey, I heard you had some accounting classes when you were in school. Would you want to maybe come work for me in tax season?" I met him at 10 o'clock at night at his home. Visited with him. He said, "Yeah, come on down. Just try for a tax season, and we'll see how it goes." And so I went down there, started, and Nick, honestly, the first day I started working on a client doing some bookkeeping. It was a farmer, and I just knew this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I mean, I don't even think I took a break. I mean, to go to the restroom. It was just I was so enthralled with the numbers, and I just loved it. I thought, this is what I want to do.
Was it just the way they fit together? What was it? Anything specific about it that you think?
I don't know. I guess I always liked math. I always liked math and numbers, but I never even thought of that when I was in college. But just doing this, it just all of a sudden it clicked, and it's just something I really thought, I enjoy this. I could see myself doing this.
So from Nebraska to where?
Oh, from Nebraska, yeah. So I worked there for about 3 years. And then I had to make a decision. I wanted to get my CPA, and so to do that, I had to get some more accounting classes. So, married at the time, had a baby, and I could have, the closest college at North Platte for 4 years was like an hour and a half away, so I'd be driving back and forth. So we decided to come down to back here to Alden, and where her folks were and where her family was, and that's when I went to SIU and I finished up there.
What do you remember about a pretty extensive exam for the CPA, is from what I understand? I'm not smart enough to take it or pass it simply, but what do you remember about taking it and then waiting to get the results?
Yeah, it was hard. When I was taking it, now they do it online, but when I was taking it, it was like a 2.5 day test. I mean, a full 2 days and another half day.
Right.
So the first time I took it, I passed in. It was like 5 parts. I passed 4 parts. And so at that time, it was good. If you passed 4, you could keep them, and you go back for that last one.
Right.
And so then the next time I went and passed that one. Literally, I was just worn out and sick by the time I took that last one, and I think that's what kind of swallowed me. But anyway.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
So then where did you? So you're in the area and you've got your CPA. So then what was the?
Yeah. Well, I worked for the place I'm working at now. It used to be called Brew, Thompson.
Okay.
And I worked for them when I was in college part time. But after I graduated, I wanted to try the bigger offices, so I went and worked at Reuben Brown. It was RBG at that time, which now they have like over 200 CPAs. And I worked for them. And then I thought, I want to get back to the smaller firms, because I missed in that larger firm the contact with the clients. I really enjoy working with the people. And I felt like in a smaller firm, when I was with Mr. Rogo at North Platte, I got to meet with the clients, work with them, and I really missed that, so I kind of came back to that. And then I got the job over here. Well, anyway, Mr. DeRoos retired, and Mr. Thompson and I got along real well, and he liked my work, and so he said, "Hey, I got a management job if you want it." And I said, "Yeah, who wouldn't?"
Right.
So that's why I started with them.
Because I think when you and I met, it was Thompson and Company.
Yes.
CPAs.
Yep. Then Mr. DeRoos was gone, and it was just Thompson and Company. Yes, and we had 3 offices at the time.
So I'm curious. He selected you. You hadn't really been there all that long, I guess.
Yeah, I worked for him about a year.
Right.
Part time. Yeah.
And in my job, I sometimes wonder. I'm not sure what the owner really saw in me, but he took a liking to me for some reason that maybe I should ask him someday. Any idea what he saw? Was he somebody that got along with everybody in the office, or?
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I think he liked Mr. Druce was in. Hope Mr. Druce doesn't watch this. he was kind of a hard guy to work for.
Right.
He was very, just kind of like over your shoulder all the time.
Mm-hmm.
felt like he didn't trust you, and I wasn't used to that.
Right.
But Mr. Thompson saw that I could work with him, and he felt like, I think if I could work with Mr. Tarus, you could work with me. And like I said, he liked the way I work with clients, and I always got along well with him, and we bounced things off each other and stuff.
So talk about getting into the ownership and buying into the firm, which was, I think you said, was about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Thompson was fantastic. I hope he is watching them. He was a fantastic guy to work with, and he gave me every opportunity. I mean, from day one, he let me walk in and just basically manage it. And if I had any questions, work with him. And I always wanted to own my own firm. I mean, that was the reason I went back and got my CPA, so I could be my own owner. And but he was real patient with me. I said, hey, I'd like to start buying in. But it's kind of hard right now. I've got 4 kids. The expenses are out, kind of going out faster than the income's coming in. And not that we weren't making it, but you know what I'm saying. It's just kind of hard to bite off.
Not a huge pile of cash sitting over here.
Exactly. And I just didn't want to go out and get a loan for it.
Right.
So he waited till I was able to start making that payment, and then we just sat down and made an agreement and figured out what that office was worth, and then we made a payment schedule, and it's just that easy. Like I said, he was so easy to work with, and he's been so good to me. I appreciate that.
So it's still Thompson Flaherty. What's his involvement at this point?
Really, there's no involvement. We do have some. He still owns a firm down in Maryville, Illinois, with another gentleman, and that gentleman's kind of buying out that office from him. And we still have some mutual clients we work with. Like I'll do the payroll, he'll do the tax return, vice versa. But so we still communicate. If I do not do audits at our office, so I'll send him his way. If I have an audit that he may be interested in and things like that. So we still good communication, get along well. And I just kept it for name recognition, so people would know it's still it's just not me, but we're still associated.
I know dating back as long as we've known each other, you always preached the benefits of owning your own business, whether it was a side business or what, just from a tax standpoint. I know I can always remember you talking about you should open a business of some sort, just for the talk a little bit about that first of all.
Okay, well, even more since the new tax law a couple of years ago, where they disallowed some employee business expenses. Like if you're an employee and you use your car for business for who you're working for, you used to be able to deduct those miles. Now you can't deduct them anymore. So if you own your own business, you can deduct mileage, you can deduct cell phones, you can deduct an office and home if you have an office and home. You can deduct all the deductions related to that business. And sometimes, if you buy a lot of equipment or buy a lot of depreciable assets, you can deduct those and even show a loss that can offset maybe your other income. And so, there's some advantages there. Basically, you can deduct more expenses than you could if you didn't own a business.
I always remember you saying, I don't know why, several things you've said have stuck with me for some reason. But you must be very very wise. But you said, even if you don't make money at it, there's benefits to it. But it's more fun if you make money at it, which is true. Talk about you. So you've worked with so many small business owners. There's a lot of folks out there maybe right now watching that are thinking, I'm working here and I'd like to buy it. What are some creative ways that you've seen for people to buy into existing businesses? Yeah.
Well, when you're looking at buying or selling a business, Nick, you kind of look at first of all, you got to look at the value.
Right.
And that's the hardest point. That's the hardest part of the sale to me, because you got to find a price where somebody's willing to pay it and somebody's willing to accept it. That's the true market value of that business. So you got to get a good evaluation. And luckily, for different industries, they have ways that you can figure that out. Like for an accounting firm, it's usually 1 times your gross or 1.1 times your gross. Pretty easy, look at last year's. But other ones they're not so easy. So anyway, you got to find that evaluation, and then you want to work with someone that has been through, like we're going through one right now, and you work with someone that knows how to do mergers and acquisitions. Where I've helped a couple businesses buy or sell, or I'll tell them, hey, don't look at that business; it's not worth it. What they're asking. So you look with someone that's qualified in that. Obviously you get an attorney involved, because there's going to be some contracts that are written up, and then you sit down with the people and you make sure that they're on the same page. That it's a win-win. Right. It is a win-win. Most of the ones I've done, Nick, are family related, and so when you get into that, then it's a little bit easier, because they're trying to work with each other. And secondly, Then you can also maybe do some gifting, some discounting of the shares because of your minority ownership and things like that. So yeah, it's just it's a pretty what's the word? It's sorry, I can't think of it right, but it's a difficult process.
Especially, I think, when you're talking about family businesses, because then emotions involved in it too.
Yeah.
And if let's say mom and dad own it, they think it's worth a certain value, and
it's a retirement a lot of times.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
So but on the other, so those can be tricky. Or if somebody that works in the business, there's just that emotional part of it, of the attachment, or even just the excitement of buying any business, whether you're emotionally attached to it or not. But you do have to look at the numbers to make sure it makes sense.
Do. And plus you've got other family members. These parents may have other children that they've got to give some assets to if they decease. So you got to be fair.
Right.
You got to be fair with everybody. You don't want any hard feelings.
Sure.
With the family.
Right. So talk about, there's a lot of business owners right now that are thinking about, okay, I've been doing this a long time. When do I start thinking about getting out, and what are some strategies that, let's say they're 5 years out from maybe wanting to get out, what are some strategies they could put in place now or start looking at to get out of the business?
Yeah, you're right, Nick. You said 5 years. That's probably the minimum you want to start thinking about selling before you actually get out. So you want to at least have a 5-year plan. And then you look and see who's going to buy it. Is there someone within the business that can take it over that you feel like would maybe be interested in buying, or is it like a family member? So then you kind of start determining who you're going to sell it to. Are you going to sell it to an inside party, or are you going to sell it to an outside party? And then I would recommend, and done this, if you're going to sell it to an inside party, you look at the outside party too. Even though you think you're going to go inside, eventually, start with the outside, because then you can know what actual pricing is. That way, you're getting the full value. You're not, and then you can come back to the inside party and basically say, hey, this is what I can get out here. I may give you a little bit of slack because you've worked with me for 20 years and you've proven that you want to run this business. But I'm just saying, it gives that owner some confidence that they are basically getting what the market's worth.
Right. Well, we sit here. It's tax time. We're there. Time to start filing, I guess. What are some things that businesses and individuals should be on the lookout, because the tax code is ever changing, I suppose.
It is. That's what keeps us in business.
Right. If it stayed the same, I guess it'd be a lot easier. But what are some things people should be aware of this year?
Yeah. Some things that I've seen already, Nick, is with the COVID relief packages that are available, is a lot of people didn't get the stimulus packages and I'm talking about individuals, the stimulus payments because of income thresholds. But maybe that was in 18 and 19, maybe 2020 is a different year. Obviously it was for a lot of people. Sure. So they may be able to qualify for that now. Or they have dependent children that now are not dependent, that didn't get it because they were not, the kids didn't get it because they were dependent. So now they can file on their own and get that stimulus payment now. So this is kind of reconciling year for the stimulus payment. So that's one thing I'm really looking at. Second thing is, big thing I'm seeing is with individuals is the retirement plans. They were able, COVID allowed people to take out up to $100,000 out of their retirement plans for if you have a good purpose or a good reason, and you can bring that money into your income. And even if you're over 59 and a half, or excuse me, under 59 and a half, it's not penalized, and you can spread that over 3 years to pay that tax on that money that you receive. So let's say you got $25,000, you can tax $8,300 the first year, the second year, and third year.
Right.
So they allow you to defer that tax over 3 years. So that's been a good thing for a lot of people. But a big thing I've kind of been watching, and this I think I mentioned this to you before, it goes against my grain. I've always been, let's take as much deduction as we can, let's save as much tax as we can, because we can use that money for your business or for whatever other expenditures you want to use. But and I think you've heard this saying too: defer, and then die. Pass it on, let your kids get the.
You have said that before.
Step up in basis. But I've been kind of looking back, and it goes against my grain. But I've been telling people, we don't know what this next administration is going to do. He's talked about getting rid of the old tax law, possibly raising taxes. With all the trillions of dollars we're in debt, I could see that happening.
Sure.
But anyway, so I'm telling people, take advantage of these lower rates now. Maybe pay a little more tax. Kind of like that example I used with you, Nick, about taking that pension money out early. I had a client that had $25,000 they took out, and I worked it both ways. I worked it at them paying it back over 3 years, or just paying it all in 1 year, paying the tax all in 1 year. And it worked out better for them in 1 year because they were still in that lower tax bracket, which is 12%, 10 to 12%. And they paid, so they're going to pay less tax on it now, and they're still way ahead of the game.
I know for businesses, a lot of businesses here took advantage of the first round of the payroll protection plan. The second one, not quite as available for most businesses. I think, you correct me, you're the accountant, but you had to show a loss of 25% in a given quarter.
Yes,
and
the gross revenue had to be at 25% less in the quarter in 2019.
So hopefully, not a lot of people experience that, but if they did, that's still available. You can still apply.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes. Where it's really good, and the previous one, the PPP one, was basically you got 2.5 times your average payroll, and payroll including the actual payroll itself, health insurance, and the various pension payments, things like that. Well, this one now, if you're in the restaurant industry or an industry like entertainment like that, you get 3.5 times. So they're really helping out those that have been hurt the most. But you're right. The big hurdle is to make sure you're 25% less in one quarter than the previous quarter. Had we known that,
right? I could have done that.
Had we known that.
I mean, I like to think we're in the entertainment business, but unfortunately, we just did lose 25%.
That's a good thing.
I guess so, right? Yeah. We're about out of time, but I know you talked about the gentleman that got you into the business. I know he was a really important mentor to you and passed away recently. And just talk about, you mentioned some things at a meeting we were at not long ago about just some sage advice that he passed on to you.
Yeah, he did, and it's so funny. I still use it. I catch myself using it a lot, and I think of him always. When I do. One of the things he always said to me is there's always a smell test, and I always thought that was funny. But I know exactly what he's saying. If something doesn't look right on paper, or when you're figuring something or calculating something, step back. Step back and look at it again, because if it doesn't smell right, it usually isn't right. And boy, I've caught myself time I'll add something up, that doesn't seem right. But again, I've done something wrong, or that I took a number wrong. So that was really a big one for me. And then a funny one, this is before Dave Ramsey. I know Dave Ramsey's on the show, and I love Dave Ramsey. And in fact, I've taught some of his classes. I'm a real admirer of his work. But anyway, we were sitting in a break room. We all took breaks together at that time. And I think I was been with him a few months. I couldn't remember. I was bragging. I said, hey, Cal, I've got my credit card down to $300. I only owe $300 on it. And he looks at me and he goes, you have a credit card balance?
Right, yeah.
And I went, well, doesn't everybody? Like try about 10,000 people. Everybody has their credit card balance. He said, well, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it. And that hit me right between the eyes. It hit me right between the eyes. And so I paid that balance off. I pay it off every month.
My mom, for some reason, taught me that at a young age. She said, I'm getting you a credit card. Don't ever have a balance. I'll always pay it off. And I pretty much live by that most every month. There's been a couple. But,
I've told my kids the same thing, Nick. That's wise words to live by.
Definitely. Well, appreciate your friendship and all the sage advice you've given me over the years, and that's been appreciated. And thanks so much for coming on the show. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you and talk about tax filing and possibly doing that this year, how can they do that?
Well, they can call me at 618-656-6010, or they can email me at kelly@thompsonflaherty.com.
Perfect.
And thank you, Nick. I enjoy your friendship, and I've learned a lot from you. You're very wise, and so I enjoy our friendship. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Record that, Joe. Make sure you get that.